only glanced at the briefing for this delivery, since I was called in as last-minute help to make sure we got everything unloaded quickly. Lots of boxes, unreliable local weather, so I was pretty sure the set of eyes peering down at us through the viewport in the very large door belonged to one of those elephant-like giants, but I really wasn't sure. The lighting inside wasn't great. Also, the glass in that little window was broken, and the massive door was peppered with dents like the big folks had been playing dodgeball with bowling balls outside their front gate. The dense jungle of tree branches above seemed to be missing some chunks, which were scattered across the ground. A memory pinged with the phrase lethal hail among the hazards to be expected here. Uh-oh. A different memory reminded me that the elephants were called sizers, or those who are the correct size if you want to be formal, but I had other things to focus on right now. Blip was yelling politely that we were here with the delivery they ordered, while Blop made dramatic gestures toward the massive pile of boxes on the hover sled. He looked like a game show assistant displaying the prizes to be won if the game show was run by fishy bodybuilders and the prizes were held down with industrial cargo nets. Windstorms were also a concern here. Blip and Blop had even gone with their tight-fitting clothes instead of the flimsy flyaway ones just in case. I'm sure getting their natural frills tossed around would be annoying enough without the clothes getting in on it too. Paint, on the other hand, wore only a heat sticker over her orange scales, a blue-white starburst on her chest that would make sure any sudden temperature drops weren't a problem, and she also wore a worried expression. I couldn't blame her. She held onto one corner of the cargo net like either it was in danger of getting blown away, or she was. A voice that was both loud and muffled filtered through the door.
Right, the replacement parts. And wait, I'll be right back.
I looked up to see the eyes disappear from view while heavy footsteps thudded away. The door remained closed. Blip and Blop looked at each other, then at Paint and me. Shrugs and nervous glances all around, I squinted suspiciously at the foggy sky that peeked between branches and above the building, and I tested the direction of the breeze, which told me nothing, but at least it let me feel productive.
Blip said, I hope they come back soon. Blop added, There's a pity they didn't just open the door so we can start unloading while we wait.
Paint craned her neck. I think I see the opening switch. It's a shame that window isn't down where we can reach it. I bent a little to see from her angle. Yeah, that sure looked like the kind of large button meant to be pressed by huge bifurcated elephant trunks. They probably wouldn't think kindly of us just opening their front door for them, I said. Blip's communicator chimed. She stood tall and answered with the dignity of someone assigned as point person on a large delivery. Blip. The rest of us kept quiet as she listened. Blop and Paint were probably straining their ears for hints like I was. Blip looked off sharply to the left, where more trees clustered near.
Okay, good to know. Unfortunately we can't speed things up because the person at the door just got called away before opening it, and I'm sure leaving their things out here to be smashed isn't an option.
Oh no. I looked at the sky again. Hail? It has to be hail, but how far away? Blip was asking whether we should start walking back to the ship or not. She stood in silence while listening to the answer. Then she said thanks and ended the call.
The captain's calling our contact, Blip announced. Hopefully someone else can come open the door and we can leave everything inside before the hail gets here. We've got a few minutes.
Oh man. I sized up the chunks of bark and fallen branches. Did she say how many minutes?
No. Wind's unpredictable.
On cue, a gust blew leaves skittering across the hard-packed dirt of the forest and onto the paving stones. Paint scampered closer to the door and cupped her hands to yell, Anybody in there? Can you open the door, please? Hello? No one answered. I stepped over to press my ear to the door, but heard nothing useful. Blip whacked a fist against the metal plate that passed as a doorbell. It clattered loudly against the one behind it, but no one inside came to answer it. Maybe they were preparing for the hailstorm too. You'd think they'd remember the fragile strangers left outside. The wind was getting stronger. A chime from Blip's communicator made me hopeful for a moment, but that was a brief moment. Blip said about 3 words, then hung up.
Captain says shelter in place. No one's answering, so she's going to see if Kavli can thread the ship between the building and the trees to pick us up. We have permission to hide under the hoverset if we need to, never mind the delivery.
Oh, that was grim. We never sacrificed a delivery. The hailstorm must be coming fast. Blip and Blop both banged on the door while Paint yelled some more, and I grabbed a chunk of branch off the ground to throw at the window. I made it through, but didn't reach the button on the wall. I tried again. No luck. Most of the stuff on the ground wasn't very aerodynamic. Hey, do we know what's in the boxes? I asked Blip. Maybe there's something we can use. Blip came to join me in peering through the cargo net. She had read the briefing.
I doubt it. Mostly replacement panels for windows that are less breakable, electronics parts and assistive devices.
Assistive how? I asked, scanning labels. Any hovertech? While the sled could only be raised a little bit, something else might bring us level with the window.
Extendable thingy-ma-whatsits, Blip said.
She found the right box and hastily unfastened that part of the net, while Blop and Paint kept up the noise. We got the box to open to find a bunch of cylinders with warning colours on one end, and an indented button in the centre. I took one out, not too heavy, aimed it carefully, away from everyone, and pressed the button. With a shunk, the tube shot out into a pole with a rubbery tip. Blip said,
I think it's for reaching stuff when they're injured or elderly or exceptionally small, or children.
Her voice got quieter as she inspected more boxes.
That would be great if we were way up there, but no luck.
I retracted the pole. No kickback to speak of. I have an idea, I said, speaking slowly while I thought quickly. The window was more than twice my height anyway, but that wasn't all that far. And we had 4 of us, 2 of which were strong. Ever heard of a human pyramid? Blip looked at me with concern.
No?
I gripped the cylinder and ran toward the door. Guys, I have an idea. Paint, you're going to have to be very brave. Paint said, Oh, I don't like this idea. But she and Blop stopped to listen. I gestured as I talked. If you 2 stand here, and I climb onto your shoulders with Paint on my shoulders, she can activate this extendo thing to hit the button. I demonstrated opening and closing the pole. Paint clasped her hands in front of her chest. Oh, I really don't like this plan. Thinking back on every reaction she'd had to my fondness for climbing things, and her shock at the very idea of something as tame as a swing set, I felt a little bad for suggesting it. Heat seekers are more at home in caves than treetops, but this was urgent. The hover sled wasn't rated for that kind of hell strike any more than the door was. You can do it, I told her. You don't even have to open your eyes until you're up there. Just hold on to me while I climb up. They're strong. They can help. It took a little convincing. If the wind hadn't been moving at an increasingly alarming speed, she probably wouldn't have agreed. The Frillian twins didn't seem all that enthusiastic about the idea either, but their role was just to be the stable base, and that probably sounded more doable. We made it happen. I gave the extender tube to Paint, who clutched it tightly and shut her eyes. Then the twins lifted her onto my shoulders. I would have gotten tired quickly if I had to carry her any real distance, but this would be fast. I could do this. With her scaly arms wrapped around my head, and the tube only poking my neck a little, I gave pointers on how Blip and Blop should stand. A bent leg here, a steadying arm there, and also there, a monumental amount of nervous sweat and lots of deep breaths later, and I had a foot on either shoulder. I stood up, sliding against the wall with one hand, and the other grasping Paint's ankle. The window was right above me. We're here, I told her. Look straight forward. Don't touch the broken glass. I braced myself in case she flinched away on instinct. Her voice was breathy among the buffeting wind. I see it. Great. Now carefully aim the tube and keep a good grip. She did. I couldn't really see much without moving my head in the way that might unseat her, so I kept very still. She let go of my head and aimed. Shunk! Went the tube. Click! Went the button. Rumble went the door, starting to slide open. Oh, jeez. Why didn't we plan for that part? Paint yelped and dropped the pole, clutching my face so I couldn't see, while I bent and groped blindly below. Strong hands grabbed my arms. Everything was a jumble of movement and panic, but I made it to solid ground, and paint was gone from my back in a way that felt like she'd been lifted rather than dropped. The chaos was loud.
Quick! Move the sled inside!
Yelled Blip over the wind and the rumble of the door.
I think I see the ship!
Yelled Blop. Paint was simply yelling, running over to the hoverslade's controls and leaping on, steering it toward the door while shouting one long note in a way that sounded cathartic. I felt like doing the same. When Paint parked inside the building, we descended on it in a rush to unfasten the net and move boxes to the floor. Anywhere on the floor, as long as it was indoors and not on the sled. I didn't bother to take in the sights, big foyer, minimal decorations, or to yell down a hall. If they hadn't heard us yet, they weren't going to now. Only a couple boxes remained when Blip's communicator rang.
What?
She asked, holding it with one hand while she twirled the net into a bundle with the other.
Great! We just got everything unloaded inside. Tell you later. Bye.
She shoved the communicator into a pocket and threw the net onto the sled.
Stay away from the door, she told
us, as if we were about to go anywhere near that gale.
They're landing now.
A loud crack made me jump, worried that the building was about to fall on us. Instead, another branch fell outside, followed by another. A shadow on the ground moved in the way that took me a moment to recognize. Our ship's grabber arm, shaped like a tentacle and operable only by strong arms. Weo was using it to clear a path while Kavle steered the ship into the limited space in front of the building. As it dropped into view, the cargo bay door was already open. Captain Sunlight clung to the doorframe with Moore and Z behind her. "Run!" she yelled, pointing to the left. "Hail!" Paint was already on the sled, steering it toward the door. She said over her shoulder, "Get on!" I scrambled on next to the Frillian twins, and Paint raised the hover height to clear both the boxes and the edge of the cargo bay. I only caught a glimpse of the wind-whipped forest as we zoomed onto the ship, but the trees in the back seemed to be flinging branches into the air. "Go!" the captain yelled unnecessarily. We were already lifting off, the bay door shutting. I got one last look at the battered entrance to the building, and that door seemed to be closing too, surprisingly enough. When the bay door shut completely, everything was quiet. I realized I was still tensed and waiting for the sound of bowling ball-sized ice chunks to slam into the side of the ship. The sound never came. Instead, the ship's intercom pinged and Kavle's voice announced, "We're clear. Leaving the atmosphere now, with a firm request to never make deliveries here again." Captain Sunlight leaned against the wall, pressing a scaly finger to the intercom button wearily. "Agreed. Even if we hadn't gotten a hold of them finally, I'd say the money's not worth dealing with that again." Weo's voice joined Kavle. "At least they paid extra." Captain Sunlight nodded. "Yes, and apologized. Thank you to all involved." She let go of the button and addressed the four of us. "Are you okay?" As she asked, Exkin came running in with a portable medkit. "I'm fine," I said, double-checking that I hadn't skinned an elbow or something in the chaos. Blip and Blop said the same. "Okay," Paint agreed, still a little wide-eyed, "despite all odds." I told her, "You were great. We couldn't have done it without you." "Thanks," she said, not calming in the slightest. "I dearly hope that was worth it." Captain Sunlight brought out a digital manifest, while Mo untangled the cargo net and Z ushered the rest of us off the hover sled. She read aloud, "Replacement window panels to withstand local hail, new central processor for primary med station, new interface screen for primary med station, power units and extension cables for relocating primary med station, plus multiple types of assistive devices." Eggskin winced in professional sympathy, busy giving Paint a once-over with the medical scanner. Captain Sunlight folded the screen away. "As I understand it, the previous hailstorm damaged both things and people. They currently have their med station blocking the hallway since the room it was in had an ill-advised skylight. When the storm clears, they'll get things squared away. Or possibly have a conversation about relocating the installation. I did make that suggestion." Paint said, "I should hope so." She tugged at the purple shock blanket that Eggskin was draping around her shoulders. Nobody deserves to live there.
Blip asked the captain, "Did they say why that first person to talk to us ran off like that?"
Yes, the captain said, frowning. There was one of only 2 uninjured people at the moment, and they were called away when one of the first in line for the repaired mess station was having difficulty breathing. Paint exclaimed wordlessly and sat down on the floor. Blip and Blop exchanged a high five.
"Worth it,"
they chorused. I sat down next to Paint. Would you like to see if Tilly is in the mood for some kitty snuggles? Yes, please, she said in a plaintive tone. I told her, nothing soothes a near-death experience like a purring cat. And you've got to be part of a human pyramid. Not many heat seekers can say that. She shuddered, then struggled valiantly to her feet. Unfortunately, she said, it was worth it.